Please like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to ring the notification bell. Thank you so much. I just want to wish everyone a happy and healthy 2023. Be safe, and thank everyone for subscribing and watching these videos. I want to talk about possible evidence now that we have a suspect in custody. He is the number one suspect. And I also want to say that every person who is incarcerated is innocent until proven guilty. This man has not been convicted of anything yet, so we are speaking, speculatively, assuming he is the perpetrator, and we are going to take it from there. What kind of evidence do we find? I have this statement from the public defender. Mr. Kohberger has waived his extradition, and he's scheduled for a hearing tomorrow, and he hopes to expedite this process. I was able to obtain a letter written by the Kohberger family through the public defender's office. It says, first and foremost, we care deeply for the 4 families who have lost their precious children. There are no words that can adequately express the sadness we feel, and we pray each day for them. We will continue to let the legal process unfold. As a family, we will love and support our son and brother. We have fully cooperated with law enforcement agencies in an attempt to seek the truth and promote his presumption of innocence rather than judge unknown facts and make erroneous assumptions. We respect privacy in this matter as our family and the family suffering loss can move forward through the legal process. As far as I can tell through my digging, that seems to be the truth, that both Kohberger and his parents have been very cooperative through this investigation.
Just about a minute ago, the yellow tape was taken down. Law enforcement has now left, and we watched multiple bags and boxes being loaded and taken away as evidence. We also saw a computer loaded. So we don't know, if they're looking for that digital evidence against Brian Kohberger. But this is his apartment. It's on the 2nd floor. He lives in 201, and we believe this is a 2-bedroom apartment. We noticed that they have not taped the door. I don't know if this is signs of them having tried to take fingerprints off this door, but they were inside this apartment for over 12 hours today, processing evidence inside the apartment. Across the way here, we talked to this neighbor earlier, and he said that, he ran into Brian Kohberger here and there, and he described him as friendly and very talkative. We talked to another neighbor who just said this is just creepy because he had run into him in the laundry room, and Kohberger had talked about being a PhD student in criminology.
Okay,
to have this
behind
happen,
you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
everyone's creeped out.
I'm so curious about what's behind you. That door behind you. Do you see? It's hard for us with the camera angle to see if there's any markings, if they've had to force their entry. Do you see any sort of crowbar markings? Did they have to break open that door? Is the lock damaged at all? Does it look as though it was maybe unlocked when they got there?
They must have gotten a key because Washington State University police also involved in this investigation. These are university apartments. This is earmarked for PhD and graduate students. So we assume that Washington State would have the keys to this apartment because these are for students. And this is campus property.
Well, it would make absolute sense if they were able to get a master key and get in there without having to break down the door, but he certainly wasn't there. And you said that you saw them come out with a hard drive. Did you see them actually carrying a hard drive out?
Yes. Yes, a large computer, a complete computer set loaded into the back of a vehicle. We saw boxes, we saw bags, we saw what I think it looked like a bag of garbage. So maybe they retrieved some of Brian Kohberger's garbage. And again, that, as you mentioned earlier, they're after DNA. His DNA maybe in some of the garbage items that was tossed inside his home.
And then quick question about the number of people that you saw parading out of there. And I think I heard you say that they had boxes and bags. Did you see them with anything small, like small envelopes that would be, just, trace kinds of pieces of evidence, maybe like, bits of sand or just hair or fibers, those kinds of things? Or was everything sort of lopped into larger, undiscernible sorts of carrying containers?
It's quite possible, Ashley, because we saw suitcases, and inside those suitcases could be those envelopes of, minute traces of items, dirt and hair and fibers. So maybe those are inside envelopes. We don't know what was inside these suitcases. We saw a number of suitcases go out. We saw a number of boxes go out. We couldn't see what was inside those boxes. So it's possible, quite possible, Ashley, that those trace pieces of evidence could be inside.
Wow. The hard drive is the most fascinating thing you told me because, that's the first thing that is a telltale. Now, this guy that they've arrested is a PhD in criminology, so he probably is smart enough to know not to, investigate victims if he indeed is the perpetrator. He's accused at this point. However, everybody who thinks they're really smart at committing crimes, they are not perfect and usually screw up in one way or another. And I'm just fascinated to did you tell me how many people that you saw, how many investigators came out of the apartment?
We saw at least 3 forensic technicians, but we also had a Washington State University officer here as well. And earlier we had Moscow police here as well. We also had Idaho State police here as well. So about 5 or 6 people here throughout the day. But what a long day for them. They were so thorough inside, taking multiple pictures. I mean, as we said earlier, flash bulbs going off inside we saw for hours. So they definitely were quite thorough inside this apartment.
The scrutiny on this case, Nancy, as you know, is going to be electrifying. And so to say that they have to cross every T, they'll have to do that 10 times. To say that they need to dot every I, they'll have to do that 20 times. And it will be excruciating for a jury as well, because any defense attorney worth her, weight in salt is going to be able to mine for anything that goes wrong in the collection process of evidence where you are right now. Fantastic reporting. I can't even believe I'm looking at you outside of that door right now after they've literally just walked out and pulled down the crime scene tape. Nancy, just fantastic exclusive reporting for News Nation. Congratulations.
This is a picture of when police arrived at that Pullman apartment to get ready to start looking for evidence. And this is the conclusion of it. You can see they are loading their van with lots of evidence. It looks like papers and boxes of who knows what. Lots of evidence bags, bins, Tupperware. It looks like a lot of electronic devices, computers and such. There's some envelopes there, some big paper bags. Who knows what they found, but eventually we will find that out. Mr. Koberger's neighbors are also starting to speak out.
Our Fox 13 Seattle team is in Pullman, Washington. That is where investigators searched the apartment of that suspect. Thank you so much for being here with us.
And investigators were combing through it all last night. It was in this building right behind me, the G building here, and that was all taped off. Investigators were going to and from the apartment, taking what looked like evidence out and bringing equipment in. It is quiet this morning. The crime scene tape is gone, and the investigators don't look to be there right now at this time, but it was an active scene last night. Meantime, I spoke to a neighbor of Brian Kohlberger. He says that he was very surprised that he has been tied now to these murders.
Oh, this is really scary for me. So even I was surprised when I saw cops there. I was like, okay, what is going on?
Students were shocked when investigators descended on this apartment complex in Pullman, Washington, after WSU student Brian Christopher Koberger was arrested for the murders of 4 college students across state lines in Moscow, Idaho. Subankar Ghosh was his upstairs neighbor.
I was like so surprised that
The two had occasionally talked in passing about their PhD programs.
because he was talkative. So when we first met, he was like, oh, hi, I'm Brian. So then I was like, I'm Subankar. So this is not common for like with other people, but he was like kind of talkative and like to talk. So then I feel that he's a kind of nice guy who likes to talk.
Ghosh is part of the computer science department. He says Koberger talked to him about his studies in the criminology and criminal justice department.
So I was like, how do you do your research? I think he said like he does experiment, like goes and talk to people.
Ghosh believes Koberger lived alone. The 28-year-old was taken into custody by local police and the FBI at 3 a.m. in the Scranton, Pennsylvania area, according to a source in law enforcement. Messages seeking comment were left for officials at WSU. The Associated Press also reports that he graduated from Northampton Community College in Pennsylvania, with a spokesperson from the college saying that he received an Associate of Arts degree in psychology in 2018. Koberger's apartment is only about a 15-minute drive from the rental home where the 4 students were stabbed to death. Meantime, the arrest announcement comes on the day that 2 victims were remembered at an Idaho memorial service Friday afternoon.
It's so bad. Yeah, I'm really sorry for that.
So now we have students on 2 campuses reeling from the news that a Washington State University student has been arrested. One here in the Washington area at WSU and another campus of students in Moscow, Idaho. Josh?
All right, so now the question, of course, becomes we don't really know a motive at this time, and we are waiting to learn a little bit more. So what is next in this whole process?
Well, we are waiting for a hearing in Pennsylvania. There's going to be an extradition hearing coming up in the next couple days to see when Koberger might be extradited back here to the Idaho area and face some justice here. People are eagerly awaiting that because we're supposed to learn more at that time. Some more arrest documents, some court documents are set to be released. They're sealed right now, but once he is extradited, we may know more about exactly why the details of this case led investigators to Brian Koberger. Josh?
All right, Jennifer.
Friends, students, teachers, everyone is going to start talking about what their interactions were with him.
So yes, there are a lot of questions that will need to wait for answers until the legal process plays out. But one thing that was confirmed by Moscow Police Chief James Fry, as we just told you, Brian Koberger had been a teacher's assistant and graduate student in the criminology program at Washington State in Pullman. Now, Washington State is only 15 or 20 minutes away from the University of Idaho in Moscow. Law enforcement was seen on campus at WSU going through that office we talked about and at the nearby campus apartments looking there. This afternoon, I spoke with Washington State journalism professor Matt Lovelace about the situation at Washington State and the thought that a teacher, a student from the area, is responsible for killing these 4. We began our chat talking about the feel on the Palouse. Does this bring relief or further complicate it all?
Certainly from some of the officers who I've known for 15 years before this incident, just a sense of relief. Today is a good day. That was from Police Captain Roger Lanier with Moscow. He just goes, today is a good day. And you could just see that relief, community-wide, law enforcement, everybody around here.
Matt Lovelace is a journalism professor at the Murrow School at Washington State University. He has navigated being a journalism professor in the midst of incredible tragedy while also reporting himself. Lovelace captured these shots of police on campus at Wazoo earlier, where they searched an office connected to the suspect, Brian Koberger.
Well, when the news broke that it was a WSU graduate student, certainly that sent a little bit of a personal shock to me. First thing I did was I came up to campus and I went there. He's got an office in Wilson Short Hall, and that building is closed down. Now, some context for that, we're at reduced operations for this week. And so just because of the holidays, most buildings are closed. I'm in the Murrow building right now. The doors are unlocked. So generally speaking, we can still get inside. They have that locked down. But just thinking about the fact that he, just a few hundred yards away from where I'm sitting talking to you now, this is my office, talking to people who work on campus, fellow faculty members, just the thought that he could have been here even before this happened. And certainly the unanswered question, which I posed right at the end of the press conference, is did he come back to school? He was a graduate student. And, I'm not passing on any reports. I don't know for sure, but we want to know, did he come back to class? Did he finish out the semester? Was he here locally? That's sort of like a lingering, I don't know, call it eerie feeling among all of us who teach here. And who knows, walked by him, what groups was he a part of here in town? Social groups. Was I next to him, having a drink at Rico's? All those little things that sort of infiltrate your brain when you worked in the same place as the guy. After 7 weeks of internet sleuths going nuts about who's here and who did what, that has been a shocking revelation for today, even though it's not entirely impossible. This is one of the largest employers in the Palouse, and so stands a reason that he could have been here. But yeah, it's just wild to think about.
The apartment like for you? Is it pretty calm and quiet, or what was that like?
Yeah, fairly calm. Few members of the media there. What appeared to me to be a handful of residents from other units, just sort of standing outside, watching things going on. There wasn't a huge presence there. It's one of those apartment complexes where there's like a basement level and stairs to the first floor and second. We're full of those here at WSU, and so we just couldn't see much going on. They were taking some things out of the apartment and sort of putting it on a little mezzanine there. Weight off the shoulders for sure. And so I think to your question, it's just that, yeah, I think that there's an overwhelming sense of, I don't know if it's closure, because it certainly isn't that. Like, there's a lot left to figure out about this case, but it feels like the first time in a long time that there's been sort of a milestone other than reports of a Hyundai Elantra and, a few extra timeline details. This really feels like the first break in the case.
Well, we do know that he returned back to campus after the murders, and he finished out his semester. He worked at this Wilson Short Hall, as you've heard, and he was grading papers. I don't know all of what his job entailed, but I have proof that he was there, and he left somewhere around December 17th or thereafter, shortly thereafter. You can see here's an email that was put out, a couple of emails of him grading the paper, December 16th at 7:20 p.m. We've also heard from some other students talking about his behavior in the recent weeks leading up to him leaving.
Little chatty going into the little approach to the tomb. He was always talkative in the beginning approach to the tomb. He very much liked it when everybody in the room knew that he knew what was going on, but it wasn't enough that you knew that he knew. He had to make absolutely sure you understood that he was smart, that he had this intellectual capacity.
People he knew from his past said that he was shy, he kept to himself, he had a small group of friends, but some of the classmates, especially girls, mocked Kohberger and threw things at him. It was just weird, she said. Brian was bullied a lot, and I never got a chance to say something to defend him because he would always run away. I think that's what led up to this, because he didn't get the proper help, and it was mostly females that bullied him. Here's another account. I knew Brian at Pleasant Valley Intermediate School. He was overweight when we were short-term friends. He was bullied a lot and socially awkward. He also had anger issues. I definitely got the impression that he is potentially on the autism spectrum. And he put in parentheses, I am an Aspie myself, so I know it when I see it. Our friendship ended after he got into a physical fight with me. He lost weight going into high school, hence why he looks older. He frequented a boxing gym during his weight loss. Friends from high school said he became more aggressive after losing weight. He had trouble making friends when we were acquainted. His mom is or was a school staff member. She was very sweet. I hope she's innocent in all this, as she was very nice to me and many other PV students. Feel free to ask me any questions. He also states that he thought that Brian exhibited bipolar disorder, but again, this is not a mental health professional. This is just another classmate, friend who's giving his impression. Lots of people are asking, did he act alone?
Moscow, Idaho, where Nancy Liu just spoke with the police chief a few hours ago. Nancy, police are telling you they believe Kohberger acted alone.
Yeah, Natasha, the Moscow police chief tells me that they have their prime suspect along with the white Elantra that they had been seeking for weeks. And as this investigation enters a new phase, this now infamous home will remain under guard, surrounded by yellow tape as a crime scene.
An hour into us releasing the name, we had over 400 people calling in.
The investigation is hardly over. A day after announcing an arrest in the Moscow murders, Chief James Fry says a new focus is building a case against Brian Kohberger.
If you've known him, if you've dealt with him at any point in time, this is now where we become more laser focused on one thing, and we're going to find out as much information as we can, but we still need our community and people's help.
Soon after Kohberger's arrest, an all-day search of his apartment on the Washington State campus in Pullman. According to a Wazoo classmate, Kohberger had a different demeanor in recent weeks. A graduate student who lives in Kohberger's campus complex is stunned that the neighbor who chatted with him about criminology may be a brutal killer.
I think it's a little bit creepy right now, obviously, because we have someone who, studied criminology background and with psychology, and he actually doing some, I don't know, it's suspect right now, right? But I can't say that if he actually did the crime. Is pretty scary and spooky, yeah.
Last night, News Nation captured crews removing multiple boxes, suitcases, and bags from Kohberger's apartment. Also taken into evidence a large computer tower. The chief has yet to hear what was recovered, but says, like the rest of the investigation, the public may not learn about it anytime soon. At the murder scene, crews set up to begin remediation and cleanup yesterday, putting up black sheeting to block the removal of items from the home. But a local court halted the process to keep the scene preserved indefinitely. Why would the court want that process stopped?
It could be many reasons. Could be for the defense counsel. Could be that they just want to hold it for a little bit.
Chief Fry says he has spoken to the victims' families, but knows there is little comfort at this point as they continue to withhold many details about Kohberger and his potential links to the victims.
It is so important to hold that information and keep it right where it was so that when we made an arrest, and now as we continue further, there will be more information that we're going to hold till the end because we want to get a conviction.
And Moscow police say they believe Kohberger is the one who committed the murders, though they continue to investigate all aspects of this case. Far more details are expected with the unsealing of an affidavit when and if Kohberger is extradited back here to Idaho. Natasha?
All right, Nancy Liu live for us in Moscow, Idaho. Thank you.
ABC's Kana Whitworth back on this tonight from Moscow, Idaho.
Tonight, police in Moscow confident the only person responsible in the heinous murders of those 4 college students is in custody.
We believe we have our guy, the one that committed these murders.
The alleged killer, 28-year-old Brian Kohberger. Chief James Fry confirming to ABC News this white Hyundai Elantra seen in surveillance video from a nearby gas station the night of the murders belongs to Kohberger, saying he was the only person inside. The car now in police custody after being taken from Kohberger's parents' home in Pennsylvania. Law enforcement sources saying police used DNA technology to help track down Kohberger 2,500 miles away.
What was it like to start zeroing in on Brian Kohberger?
It's stressful. That this individual is out there somewhere. We knew that there was going to be an arrest made in Pennsylvania. That's still, even though we're here, it's stressful here.
Kohberger living just 10 miles from the crime scene in Pullman, Washington, where he had been working towards his PhD in criminology at Washington State.
To find out it was our neighbor, it was very horrific.
Those who knew the alleged murderer left stunned by his arrest.
It was just a shock. He was always nice to me, maybe not to other people.
Now, authorities have not released any information on a possible motive or connection between Kohberger and the victims. But Kohberger's lawyer saying that he wishes to be quickly brought back here to Idaho so that he may be exonerated.
So we have a lot of reports on what the evidence actually is tying him to the girls. I have my own belief, as I've stated in my very first video. I think this is going to likely have something to do with the restaurant that Maddie and Xana both worked in. If you haven't seen that video, you can check it out. I originally thought that Kaylee and Xana both worked there, but it was actually Maddie. I don't know if Kaylee worked there at one time, but I have pictures of her in there. We know that the Hyundai Elantra was not a vehicle that was registered in his name. He also has no criminal history, which means that if DNA is a factor, he would not have hit in the CODIS database or shown up as a match. So that's probably why a lot of this is speculative, or if there truly is a source. I wanted to check out myself if they were going to be able to track the movements of the car, as year and model have a lot to do with that. Some of the Elantras did come with that capability, and I was able to get the Carfax from the vehicle, and we can see that it was registered in Pennsylvania, and we can also see that it was serviced in August. And ironically, 5 days after the murders, the vehicle registration was changed over to Washington State from Pennsylvania. I also was able to look up through the VIN the type of Elantra it is, and you can see here, and I'm going to point it out, that his Elantra was a limited SE edition. Limiteds usually have more options, and it has Blue Link. Blue Link is a subscription option, but it's 3 years. It comes free with a new Hyundai. It's basically tied to your phone, and it can give you GPS, and it can notify police in an accident and do other things. It does theft tracking. It can locate your car if it's stolen, if the police contact them. So that means that this car was in fact trackable. It also had GPS navigation. I can point that out to you right here, that his car did come standard with that feature. Another question that comes to mind, he was pulled over for that citation, and here it is, out in Moscow. It was on 8/21/2022. And we can get to the location of that, which was Pullman Road and Farm Road in Moscow. Let's look at that intersection. So we see there's a huge shopping plaza here. There's a Target, Marshall's, Old Navy, Joann's, Staples. Here's a full directory. There's Ulta, Ross, Old Navy, Petco, which, you know, I was curious about because Kaylee had a dog. You know, could he have seen her at Petco? Could he have seen the other dog that had a murder that wasn't solved in this case and tried to follow them and then was stopped? I only say that because this happened on August 21st, and that dog was killed 2 months later to the day. And it was only 8 minutes, 3 miles from that shopping center. So, I mean, he could have been there just innocently shopping. Who knows? Just a thought. He was being tracked cross country, which now we know would not be hard to do. So somewhere between the 7th and maybe the 17th or 18th, they were able to start following that car. Brian was also seen wearing gloves in supermarkets. And this is all allegedly. People claiming to state how smart he was. But a source also telling people that cell phone data is going to be a factor in this case. Now, when they say source, I don't really know what that means, but this is what's being put out. We do know that these people were likely stalked, or this home was being stalked. Now, we'll get into motives eventually. The public defender in his case was speaking to Brian Kohberger's attorney stated that he invoked his right to an attorney 5 to 15 minutes after being arrested. He was calm, fully aware. He said that he knows he lived 10 minutes from, the murder scene. His family did not pay for a lawyer, but they also confirmed that he had that trip planned for a long time, he and his father, to drive back. So it was before these murders. A lot of people are speculating that his dad tried to cover something, which I do not believe is true. Also about the service station being so odd. I don't think so. You're going on a 2,000 plus mile trip. It would only be natural you'd change the oil, check your tires, and that sort of thing. At his prior college, he trained under Catherine Ramsland. She teaches forensic psychology, and she's an assistant provost. She created the psychology program and wrote this book, Confession of a Serial Killer, The Untold Story of BTK, which was Dennis Radar, who lived two completely different lives, one as a family man and one as a serial killer. So we do know that.
I want to start with the idea that one of the reports that we got is that when they went in to capture him, that he said, "Am I the only one that was arrested?" What do you make of that? And give us your analysis of this whole case and where we are today.
Well, that would suggest that there is an accomplice. I want to point out two things. This guy has got a master's degree in criminology. He's currently working on a PhD in criminal justice. Yet he drove the getaway car all the way and parked it outside of mommy's house? Are you kidding me? Another thing we know about this guy, he has been described as obsessively vegan, to the point that he made his parents get rid of their pots and pans. Oh no, the bake process in the dishwasher wasn't enough. They had to buy new pans that had never touched meat. What does that tell me? He is obsessive. He is fastidious. He's about 6 feet tall. He's socially awkward. He planned this whole thing out. Did you notice the charges? He didn't go in to steal. He didn't go in to rape anybody. He went into that home with the intent to kill. How long had he been watching these girls? And as we speak, Jason, they are tearing his Pullman apartment apart for any notes or writings, anything that can match him up to this murder, and I predict they will find it.
So the suspect here, I mean, the initial profile that came out, this is pretty close to the person that is the suspect at this point.
Yes, it is. From the get-go, we said a male between 25 and 38 to 40, a white male because people normally kill within their own race, single, which he is. As a matter of fact, there's no indicia of a girlfriend, an ex, a fiance, even a high school girlfriend hasn't been dug up yet. So is this guy an incel? What was his motivation? And let me remind everybody, the state doesn't even have to prove motivation. But I can tell you, take a look at this guy. Would it surprise you to see him, that face staring in your bathroom window? Because it would not surprise me. And this is a death penalty state. 4 bodies equals the death penalty.
Well, we also know his mother is very vocal in the news. She was a teacher. She expressed that she does not personally support abortion and that she does not believe in the death penalty. She believes that it's still just murder. She seemed to be angry at the Pocono Record for an article on Democrats and pigeonholing them into a stereotypical category. If Kohberger is found guilty, he will be eligible for a death penalty in this case.
Well, I hope that the parents have some degree of closure and something in their heart and their family members that they get some degree of closure.
Sir. There's no such thing as closure. This guy will probably end up with a life sentence unless a jury comes to their senses and gives him the death penalty. These families, and I know as being a victim of violent crime, You get a life sentence for the rest of your life, wondering what your loved one went through at the time of their death. It will never be over for them. There is no closure for these families.
No, it's a good point. But do you believe that there is or is not somebody else out there? The police chief was asked a direct question. He didn't exactly give a totally 100% conclusive answer to that.
You're so right, Jason. He totally dodged it. Forensically, it appears that there was only one type of weapon used. So what am I supposed to think? They handed the knife off to each other? No. But could someone have been a lookout? Did someone help plan it? Possibly. But in my mind, highly doubtful.
No murder weapon at this point. What's your take on that?
I think he got rid of the weapon. I think he studied long enough, getting his master's and soon his PhD in criminology, to know to get rid of the murder weapon. Hello? But still, I am confounded by the fact that he kept the car. Maybe he couldn't explain that away to mommy and daddy. And that car, as you heard a few minutes ago, is going to be a treasure trove. Look, it's practically impossible to clean blood out of a car. You can't get rid of DNA with bleach. You've got to use something like muriatic acid, such as black swan. He didn't do that. I guarantee you they're going to find something, some trace in that car, be it the front, the steering wheel, the ignition, the hatchback. There will be something in that car.
Yeah, it was December 7th that they put out that picture at 3:45 in the morning. That car's going by, but it obviously played a huge role in the evidence in trying to track this person down.
It really did. We long said, find the car. Our hopes were raised when a car similar to this was found in Oregon with a homeless person sleeping in it. That was not the car. This is the car.
And unfortunately, the police were looking for the wrong year model of the car, which changed significantly from the 2011-13 models to the 2015. You can see the grille there. Very dark grille pattern. Plastic. In the 2015, this is the actual model that he would have had, the SE Limited. It has fog lamps, different bumper grille, completely. Different sport wheels. There's vents in that grille. The bumpers were changed. That's a 13 bumper. You can see the reflectors are in the mid portion of that lower rear bumper. In the 15, they redesigned it. They made a bigger bumper, and they made that piece of the bumper plastic around the exhaust, and the reflectors are up higher on that bumper. I wonder how sure they ever truly were. They knew it was an Elantra, but clearly they weren't sure on the year. I wish they would have stated that. We may have been able to find a vehicle a lot sooner and hone in on this.
Now, we understand that they have matched him up to DNA at the crime scene. It can't just be any DNA, because that was a real party house. And is there anything wrong with that, having a good time? But DNA at critical locations, such as in both the bedrooms, on all the bodies or more than one body, possibly on the doorknob. Did he touch the doorknob of the downstairs girls that lived that night? It's not just DNA at the scene. It's DNA at critical locations in that scene that will now match up to him. Where did they get the matchup? Maybe like you heard earlier, genealogical DNA, or maybe they got his DNA from this 4-day stakeout we know that the cops have done. Did they see him throw out a pizza or a McDonald's coffee cup? We don't know, but they were watching him for a reason.
Nancy Grace, love your perspective. Appreciate your passion on this.
Also circulating an article in the Pocono Record from his sister. She wrote a poem for the Uvalde victims. She says, bereft of their laughter, there is now not a sound as we lower our children into the ground. Small hands and feet buried 6 feet deep into the earth of the world that failed them. As I read the poem, I thought, whatever the solution, I pray we consider the children before the gun. So it seems his family is rather passionate about political statements, and maybe some of this resonated, as we've heard previous reports of Brian being bullied as a young child. Bullying is a real problem, whether it pertained to this suspect or not. We've seen several murders carried out from people who were victims of bullying. And this is something that really needs to be addressed in our country, I believe. I'm not here to get in politics or anything like that, but I believe every tragedy should have a takeaway. And we do know that this is a factor in other cases. I think that here in the United States, we really need to examine how to make our kids a little more compassionate and stop these cycles of bullying. I think that's really important. It's not happening at home, clearly. There's a lot of factors that I'm not going to get into in regard to that, but that is definitely something that is truly sad. My condolences to the victims of Uvalde. That was a terrible tragedy. We also know that his family was pretty close-knit. Someone posted on TikTok a proof of them having a reservation at a restaurant. I don't know what the restaurant was, but it was somewhere there in the Poconos, and that they requested a booth with dim lighting. People are going to read into every single thing, and I don't think that that necessarily means anything. Somebody could have eye problems for all we know. We do know that this is an ongoing investigation, and they're going to continue to dig. And no matter what excuses we come up with, there is no excuse. Brian clearly had high intelligence and knew the difference between right and wrong. This wasn't an impulse decision. This was something well thought out, well planned. And if he in fact truly is the perpetrator, which it's looking like, they're going to have a tough time with this defense, if what's being portrayed is true. But innocent until proven guilty. We'll see how it all plays out. If anyone has any tips now that this suspect has come into light, or a piece that they may think fits, or something else, please call those tips in. Maybe you were at the corner club. Maybe you know someone who works there. Maybe you recall something from you being there another time. Who knows? But anyone who has any information, I hope they choose to come forward. These were 4 young people with a lot of promise, working hard at school to hopefully have a bright future. This should happen to no one. Ethan was a nice young man with his whole life ahead of him. You got 4 people here gone. And if you have any information relating to little buddy, please call those tips in. Contact the Moscow Police Department, 208-883-7180. And they do have a tip line. You can leave an email there. Please consider subscribing. I hope everyone has a safe and happy 2023 up ahead. I hope we can get some more good information in this case, and we can continue to get justice for these victims. Thank you.